Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed for having me here. You've had a lot of politicians, I think, today. How many have you had, Adam? So someone said too many.
Two to go.
3 down, 2 to go. My word. Well, if we've got to start with a confession or apology, I suppose I should start with that. I wouldn't dare, and I don't suppose Ed or indeed Alan would dare sort of travel by helicopter to destroy our green credentials. But the three-party leaders, Nick Clegg, Gordon Brown and David Cameron, did fly by helicopter to the by-election we had in Scotland last year. And as they were sort of travelling up there, they got into conversation. You sometimes do this in the kind of margins of debates in the House of Commons. And Gordon Brown said, the thing I really enjoy about being Prime Minister is that you can have the power to really make a difference to people's lives. For example, I could take £1 million in a suitcase, throw it out of the window of this helicopter, and someone down there would be fantastically grateful. Their life would be transformed as a result. Nick Clegg said, well, I thought you were a socialist, Gordon. Call yourself a socialist. You should have it in £10 notes. Then you could throw 100,000 notes out of the window, make 100,000 people very happy. And David Cameron said, well, if you really want to make some impact, why don't you do it as pound coins? Have £1 million coins sprayed between London and Edinburgh, and then 1 million people will be happy. Just at this point, a voice came over the tannoy of the helicopter, and it was the pilot. Don't tempt me, he said. I could throw all 3 of you out and make the whole country delighted. So I can understand if after all these politicians, you might be feeling in the same way. But I'm pleased to be here, not only as the Shadow Energy and Climate Change Secretary, but also as the Shadow Minister for Teesside. I was born and bred on Teesside in the shadow of the South Bank Coke Works. I went to school. The industry of the time, the steelmaking industry, was incredibly important and a source of great pride, the kind of history of steelmaking on Teesside. So it is, I'm afraid, a very sad time to be contemplating tomorrow when that sort of great plant is going to be mothballed. And I hope that it will be possible to bring it out of the state of mothballing that it's about to be put into. And if any purchaser is identified, I do think it's important that this isn't just something that is land that is going to be land banked and is going to be used in a way that doesn't make use of those very precious skills that we have there at Chorus and Teesside at the moment. I think we all need to know that. And as Hugh and John said in their remarks, I do think that the prospects, if we organise ourselves correctly, to once again have a worldwide reputation for this part of the world, around the world, just as we had the reputation for steelmaking, for bridge building. We were synonymous with these great industrial successes. There is the opportunity before us now to have that same reputation in the low-carbon economy. And for all of the reasons that Hugh and John have said, this is a growth sector. This is unambiguously, people can gaze into crystal balls and sort of wonder what are the industries of the future going to be. Well, energy, I think you can say pretty certainly, is going to be one. Not just in this country, but around the world. But just to take this country as an example, the investment required to replace our current generating capacity for electricity and the networks that surround it is going to, by 2020, require anything between 100 billion and 200 billion of new investment. That has to be done, with no alternative. The capacity is going to be withdrawn over the next few years, and it needs to be replaced, about 1/3 of our generating plant. Energy security was mentioned. You know, Winston Churchill had this great dictum when he was in charge of the Admiralty and was looking to secure supplies of fuel for the Royal Navy. He said, diversity and diversity alone is the key for energy security. And I think that applies, as much today as it did 100 years ago, and it applies to our energy situation. And especially as North Sea oil and gas are in decline, I think we need to diversify the range of energy sources that we have. And that has great opportunities for those new technologies that will contribute to that diversity. And the economic imperative. We're already seeing, as the world economy emerges from recession, oil prices recovering from the low that they hit 18 months or so ago. And if it's the case that demand increases and China and the rapidly industrializing countries start to increase their consumption ahead of production, then we're exposed at least to the risk of potentially higher and volatile energy prices that I think we all accept we ought not to be faced with as an economy. We need to proof ourselves against that. And then our environmental targets, to require the legally binding target that we now have to reduce by 80% our greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 is something that is going to drive changes in technology. So all the forces are there for this to be a really important new market. And I don't want to be party political about this, because I dare say that Ed this morning would sort of recognise and share the same analysis. What's frustrating to be standing where we are today in 2010 is a lot of the investment decisions and policy decisions that we ought to have taken in anticipation a few years ago haven't been taken. So we've got a closing window that make it even more important that people in this room and people around the country generate those investments during the next couple of years. I mean, if you look back at our nuclear program, nuclear was mentioned, I think, by Hugh. We know that by the end of the decade, the majority of our nuclear fleet will have reached the end of its planned life. It's now too late to replace that like for like with new nuclear. We've got a gap in the middle there that we could have avoided if we'd taken policy decisions earlier. And I think it's the same when it comes to take the North Sea. We know that, I think it was in